Space, the final copyright strike. Hey everybody, it's your buddy Beard Grizzly, and today we're going to zoom through our solar system and check out the announced moons and planetoids we've seen so far in Destiny 2. I figured this would be a cool little look to see what's happening on them now versus what's going on with them in Destiny, especially with the Traveler doing its terraforming thing. First, a couple announcements. If you didn't hear from a couple of videos ago, I will be going to GuardianCon. This is from June 30th to July 1st, and I hope to see some of you there. Second, I now have a website. I'll post the link to it in the description below. It's still a bit work in progress, but I think it's the best way to kind of keep up with everything that I'm doing here, and I do think it's coming along nicely. Lastly, I have a Discord. If you'd like to join up and talk theories, ideas, post your outtakes or awesome things in the Crucible, just kind of hang out and chill, whatever. That's what it's for. The community will be there and we could go ahead and sit and chit-chat for a little while. Link, of course, is also in the description below. Now, back to our solar system. I'm skipping the obvious one on the list, of course. I mean, come on, do I have to talk about our sun? You see it most days you look up. Unless you live in England, then I hear you only know what clouds look like. Anyway, there's three not-so-big worlds to look at that Bungie has talked about so far. Titan, the largest moon of Saturn, Io, a highly volcanic moon of Jupiter, and the little-known centaur planet, Nessus. Yes, let's get this out of the way. Nessus is a real thing. At least it's the completely named object, I should say. It's nothing like, of course, what we see in the game. I find it funny how Bungie alluded to the existence and our possible visitation of these moons. I had a feeling something was up when they started to be highly specific of certain planetoids in the Google search card. Nah, it's not the Cade 6 card anymore, it's the Google search card. Just to pull a few snippets. Major events of 126 years ago. Significant progress made in faction accords. Related, Brask A. Traveler True Origin and Perp. Minor events of 126 years ago. First 25 match Crucible winning streak recorded. Related, Ray I. Centaur Planetoid 7066 Nessus re-enters system after unexplained delay. Relate, since the Traveler's final exodus from Io prior to the collapse, Echo Mesa has been a popular pilgrimage destination for Guardians. As the Traveler's transformation of the Jovian moon was incomplete, Io's climate and geography do not support agriculture in the conventional sense. Vanguard Commander Zavala therefore recommends. Titan sadly doesn't seem to have a lot of hints that I've been able to find, but we have to have some hint as to figuring out who the Nine are, right? I just want to know more about you, you tentacle face, jerk face. We'll start off with Titan, since most of what we've seen so far is based on a few clips from the reveal stream. First, Titan is seen today as a big ball of gas, at least on the outside. Compared to the actual planet of Saturn, you'd think it was a very unremarkable gaseous moon at first look, but never judge a book by its cover. Discovered by Christian Huygens in the early days of astronomy back in 1655, Titan is one of the largest moons in the solar system. That is, after our own and several others around Jupiter, but we'll get there. The only thing that Huygens was able to piece together was that this was a moon around Saturn, and it turned out to be the largest. He could never see underneath the clouded atmosphere with technology of the time. Underneath this heavy atmosphere of clouds, vapor, and gas is a planet that's not too dissimilar from Earth. Thanks to the Cassini-Huygens probe that arrived in the Saturnian system back in 2004, we've been able to break through that cloud layer a little bit, just to see the surface, comprised of mountains, rolling sands, and lakes. Except these lakes happen to be liquid methane. As it stands, Titan would not be a very breathable place for us today, and it's unknown if anything happens to live under the surface of this liquid methane or not. Regardless, in its current state, it's hard to know if a Guardian could or would survive very well on the surface with or without a helmet. Since they can operate in a vacuum to a point shown on the moon and all, maybe. Just your armor's gonna smell like yuck for a while. Closest I'm coming to a fart joke on this channel. In the reveal, it was said that Titan has no land masses left on it whatsoever. Now, this is interesting to note considering there's definitely land on Titan right now, visible from the Cassini-Huygens probe around Saturn. With this being the case and the obvious amount of human-built structures lining the planet, did humanity get rid of the land masses? or did something happen with the travelers terraforming? Either way, they've told us the Golden Age structures here are going to be swallowed up under the sea soon enough. Soon, we may not be able to use Titan as a place to escape if these places should happen to go underneath this liquid methane. It's not the first time I've thought of terraforming gone wrong, not complete or just starting to fall apart. Places on Venus showcase a lot of volcanic activity, spewing tons of carbon and sulfur into the air. This is how Venus turned into a greenhouse planet to begin with, all of the cloud cover in the atmosphere, locking in loads of gases and whatnot. Ah well, that's speculation. We'll have to see what becomes of Titan and its human-based structures, but if there's a shopping mall, I totally want to see what video games they had in the Golden Age. Next on our list is Io around Jupiter. Io is one of the 4 large moons called the Galilean moons. These consist of Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. The name of this cluster should somewhat give it away, but the initial viewer of these moons was named Galileo. Yep, the Galileo, the one that made it famous to look through a telescope up at the sky. With his limited technology in 1610, he couldn't quite figure out that there were 2 moons in the same general area of his observations, which led to Io and Europa being cataloged together for a rather long time. It wasn't until 1890 that Edward Barnard looked through his telescope to Jupiter and discovered the truth, 280 years after its initial cataloging. Since then, we've created several probes that have gone past this system, the famous ones being Galileo, Voyagers 1 and 2, and Pioneers 1 and 2. All of them have come back with a gaggle of images of the sulfuric moon, including several images of volcanic activity and a vastly multicolored surface. Still, I'd rather go here than I would Titan, at least there's plenty of land that we can see. In the reveal, we're told this is the last place the Traveler touched, so the question is how far or how much did the Traveler change on this moon? We see a structure of some kind in the distance alongside Ikora, and I'm more than curious to see what it's about. Ikora also says, "This is where I return," which would or could suggest she's been here before. Was this where she was raised as a guardian? What purpose does the structure hold here? I'm getting serious Star Wars Jedi Temple vibes going on. The landscape itself seems to have been changed to house more plateaus or some kind of forestry, or at least large trees with some vegetation. With Io having all these crags and rocks, I'm curious to see how deep we can go below the surface. We're promised a range of mythology and links back to the Golden Age on this planet, so I'm definitely excited to see what else it holds. We hear of a lot of possible Clovis Bray links back throughout the Grimoire and Cade's journal, so here's to Io. And the best for last, Nessus, or as it's lovingly called in the astronomy community, 7066 Nessus. In case you're wondering, the number in front of a planetoid like this is designated by the Minor Planet Center, and first started in the 1850s. Initial catalogs were filling up at a fast rate, so in the interest of having a system, they settled on numbers. This goes back with major asteroids such as Vesta, another nice little Destiny tie-in in reference. Vesta's full designation is 4 Vesta, and this was given the designation as it was the 4th minor planetoid asteroid to be discovered. The tradition carried on and on ever since, even with Pluto now given the designation 134340 Pluto. It's not a planet, folks. No, stop. Don't send me angry letters. It's not my fault. Blame this guy. With there being so many different objects identified in our system, Nessus, of course, is part of a big family. Then what makes it so special? It may come down to the way Nessus orbits our sun and our other planets. It takes up to 122 years to make an orbit around the sun, and of the approaches we've been able to record, it doesn't come close to our planets either. Granted, within another 20,000 years that may change, but I don't know if it's been that long since the collapse happened. I mean, it's been a long time, but not 20,000 years. Unless the Vex did something to change that. An orbit for Nessus means it could come closer to the Sun than Uranus does, but it could be further out than Neptune. All this means, if nothing else, is that Nessus is very unstable in its orbits, and it tends to retreat into another area called the Kuiper Belt, like that of most of the other minor planets. If the Vex are able to take advantage of this in some way, that would allow them to move the planetoid closer into our solar system. Nessus isn't the only one that could fit this bill, but it is one of the smaller objects caught in our sun's gravity that could easily be shifted if you possibly know how to do so. And it is the Vex, so who knows? The other reason I say this is thanks to Nessus being a bit behind in its normal orbit. Referring back to the Grimoire card, it mentions that it's about 4 years later than its typical orbital period. I should probably sum all of this up, huh? Basically, the Vex may have been able to manipulate the path of Nessus, so long as our estimates are correct today, and the 20,000 years before it would make a close path is correct. It's a good listening post for the Vex to be able to watch over the solar system while staying out of our way and still able to act as they need to, testing their abilities out on this not-so-big world. Kinda similar to what they were doing on parts of Mars. Area designation, Crossroads. Location, the last oasis, Mars. An active Vex structure on Mars with no Cabal vying to occupy or destroy it is rare. Even rarer is such a facility abandoned by the Vex themselves. Detailed analysis of the site estimates 3 separate ecosystems that the landscape could support. If the area had any wildlife to benefit from it, a hidden report to Ikora mentioned they clove this ruin out of the land, possibly to defend themselves from a long-vanished enemy, or perhaps to isolate the land for experimentation. If we look at the reveal, we start to see a few things that look similar to how Crossroads is built up, and of course also similar to other Vex-controlled areas. The Vex work with time as their ally, so who knows what it is they've been doing over the last 126 years, or even further than that if there was some other way that they could port a planet around, or maybe they moved its orbit. It should also be noted that Nessus holds a very interesting part within the minor planet world, which is that it will stay within our solar system for another 4.9 million years. That is atypical of other minor planets within our orbit, which could only last a couple million. As usual, there's too many options when dealing with the Vex, so who knows? We also don't really know what is considered by Bungie as a close approach within our solar system, but being we're going out as far as Saturn again, it could be somewhere around there? Its placement on the director, if that's any point to be believed, might suggest so, or even closer by Jupiter. Really, it's unknown right now. In either case, gang, I think that's where I'll leave it. For now, this is what we know about these moons and planetoids. With the promise we'll know exactly what's happened in these places, I'm excited to see what Bungie has in store for us. We may be revisiting older planets, we may be seeing some newer ones, and of course, with DLC out there eventually, well, sky's the limit on that possibility. In either case, thanks for listening to my silly nerd ramblings. I really like tying in real-life science with Destiny and other games from time to time, so if you're into that kind of thing, hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to like, dislike, or share, and if you'd like to comment but aren't sure what to say, leave the phrase minor planet in a comment below. If none of that, thanks very much for being here at the very least. As always, I can only ever be Beard Grizzly, and I'll see you next Spacetime Guardians. Take care.